Ah, Russia. The home of diverse landscapes, brutal winters, impressive mountain ranges, and corruption. A country once known for its formidable geographical defence, making it almost impossible for them pesky European imperialists to successfully capture. Nowadays it's more known for their own imperialistic ambitions, and their amazing logistical ability to shift vast amounts of looted white goods out of the countries they've invaded. Today we talk about a tragic story filled with governmental oversight, local and national security mismanagement, bad tactical decisions, and the ever-enduring black cloud over Russia, otherwise known as Vladimir Putin. So chill out, grab your 2 litres of vodka, pull up a chair and turn on your looted TV. Let's discuss the siege of the Dubrovka Theatre. Moscow, October the 23rd, 2002. A sense of excitement is in the air as locals pile into the Dubrovka Theatre to watch a play. On tonight's roster, Nord-Ost, based on the fictional story The Two Captains. The promotional posters promise the best night in Moscow. And over 1,000 pundits have turned up to enjoy the event. But all is not well. You see, another group of people are heading to the theatre, and they have not paid for tickets. To understand this group of fare dodgers, we have to zoom out from Moscow and get a wider picture of the region's ongoing tension involving Chechnya. After the First War ended in 1996, with Chechnya coming out on top and claiming a de facto independence from Russia, an uneasy peace had fallen over the region. But Russian officials were not happy. The president at the time, Boris Yeltsin, unleashed his successor and his FSB lapdog, Vladimir Putin, to see what political wires he could waggle in the hopes to drive up public support for another pop at Chechnya.
I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving!
You see, after years of mismanagement and blatant corruption, Yeltsin had a diabolical approval rating of just 2%.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
This meant Putin, being his successor, had almost no chance whatsoever of becoming the next president of Russia. And little bro didn't like this. The Chechen separatist groups had a long history of terrorist attacks as they pushed towards their goal of an Islamic state. Putin knew this, and he knew nothing brings a country closer together more than a nice bit of shared trauma. And wouldn't you know it, that trauma suspiciously dropped on Putin's lap in the form of a series of bombs that destroyed civilian apartment blocks in 1999, killing hundreds. Now, I don't want to roll around in the pig shit of speculation. However, it's only right to point out there has never been any evidence of Chechen involvement in these attacks, and when 3 men were caught and arrested for putting a bomb in a 5th apartment block, it turned out that they were in fact not Chechens, but FSB agents. I'll leave it up to you to make your own conclusions, but what matters is it led to a large spike in support for military action against Chechnya. Putin became an almost saviour of Russia type figure as he took control of the conflict. The Second Chechen War was on, and it would have dire consequences for our friends watching the Nord-Ost play. So, this is Shamil Basayev, a Chechen guerrilla leader who served as a military commander for separatist Chechnya. After his mother, 2 children, his sister, his brother, and multiple other family members were killed by Russian airstrikes, he kind of just snapped.
Fair enough.
His favourite pastime became organising terror attacks against Russia and taking hostages. There's even video of him having his leg removed after stepping on a mine, with an almost bored expression on his face as he watches doctors fucking hack his leg off. All of this is to say that although we don't know for sure that he planned the theatre attack, or if he just claimed responsibility for it after the fact, it does kind of fit his style. Like any good revolutionary, he wouldn't personally be there during the attack. But the story goes he did appoint the young 23-year-old warlord Suleymanov to get the job done. He would go on to be the face of the siege. Shamil and Suleymanov then play Pokemon Go.
You teach me and I'll teach you. Pokemon. Gotta catch 'em all. Pokemon.
To round up the most hardcore and loyal Chechen fighters they could find, a large percentage of them being women who were often widowed by Russia's aggression. With anywhere between 40 and 50 fighters gathered, they were ready to go. The so-called suicide squad of the 29th Division had their target in sight. It was time to head to the theatre, and something tells me they were not there for the arts. Act 2 was in full swing and the audience were enjoying the best night in Moscow. The actors were acting, the props were propping, and everyone was having a jolly good time. Then, just after 9 PM, the suicide squad of the 29th Division arrived in a bus and stormed the theatre. Armed with Kalashnikovs, grenades, and strapped with their favourite toy, suicide vests, they entered through the front door and quickly secured all exits. They fired warning shots into the ceilings and demanded everyone get down and stay down.
Heads down, stay down.
Although some managed to flee, the majority decided to cooperate with the Chechens, which, given how well armed they were, was probably a good idea. After a short time, Suleymanov had control of the situation and started to process the hostages. They were only really interested in Russians, so many with a foreign passport were allowed to leave, along with a handful of pregnant women, Muslims, and young children. With that sorted, the squad got to work. They moved everyone into the orchestra hall and they placed strategic bomb carons around the pews.
Don't you dare talk back to me. Give me your manager.
They reminded everyone that if anyone tried to be a hero, they would simply attach 2 wires. That would not only detonate their own vests, but every vest in the theatre. In what seems like a strange move, the hostages were allowed to use their phones to contact loved ones or the media. The squad wanted maximum attention, and they knew their message would not be stagnated by Russian bureaucracy if they had direct lines to the public. Fortified and secured, the squad waited for the Russian response. Yes? Sir, we have a problem. In Russia, you don't have problem. Well, it's just a group of heavily armed Chechens have stormed the Moscow theatre. Hello, sir? Are you there? A confusing mishmash of Russian response teams were gathered at the scene. This included local police, FSB and Spetsnaz. Along with armed vehicles, they surrounded the theatre and waited for their demands. The immediate and unconditional withdrawal of Russian troops inside Chechnya within the week. All anti-terrorist activity in Chechnya would stop immediately, and Vladimir Putin would state publicly that he was working to end all activities within Chechnya. If any of the demands were not met, or if they killed any of the hostage takers, they would murder 10 hostages in retribution. In response, the Russians offered them safe passage to any country they wished.
That's a fucking lie, you dumb hooker.
They refused. Most hostages were more concerned that the Russian forces would try and gain entry, and they could see how easily that could go catastrophically wrong given just how well armed and booby-trapped the area was. The suicide squad designated the orchestra pit as a communal shitter. Everyone who needed a toilet would now have to relieve themselves there. This only added to the horrible feeling inside the hall, as a musky smell took over. They were settling in for the long haul, and any hopes of this being over quick had vanished. As the early morning of the 24th of October rolled in, the Russian forces outside were getting bored. They wanted to shed some blood, but so far, all they had done is stand around in heavy gear and waited. This led to the outside perimeter being less than secure. At around 1 AM in the morning, a lone woman named Olga strolled through the lines on a mission. She had had enough of the commotion and decided she would sort it out herself. She walked straight into the hall and casually started telling the hostages to rise up and beat the shit out of the squad. They shot her 4 times. Outside, the hastily put together force was in a complete mess. Very little was coming from the Kremlin, and with no real structure, random people from political elites were just having a pop at negotiations. Boris Nemtsov, who was then a member of parliament and later went on to be a critic of Putin, and got murdered, and Russian parliamentary member Joseph Kobzon had a crack and had a little bit of success, managing to free a handful of hostages. And even the birdship boy himself, Mikhail Gorbachev, wanted to go, but no one paid him any attention. One of the people the squad actually wanted to negotiate with was the Russian head of the Chechen Republic, Akhmat Kadyrov, the father of Chechnya's biggest joke, Ramzan Kadyrov. They promised 50 hostages would be set free if he came to Moscow and headed the negotiations. But I guess he was busy beating his wife that day because he refused to even respond. A few things of note happened on the 24th. First, an FSB negotiator, for some reason, attempted to enter the theatre but was pushed back by a wave of gunfire. Then, as FSB agents tried to set up a listening device, they burst a hot water pipe and alerted the entire squad. The FSB were forced to retreat again. At the end of the first full day, 39 people had been released, and the hostages settled down for another night. During this time, to the squad's frustration, no one could get Putin on the line. He seemed to take a typically hands-off approach. That night, things got a little spicy. Somehow, another man strolled past the police line and ran into the theatre, apparently looking for his son. The squad quickly shot him dead. Then, a hostage called Dennis attempted to rush one of the squad. He charged a woman guarding a large IED. In the scuff, a stray bullet killed another hostage called Pavla and seriously injured another. Dennis would be taken out the hall and executed. Later, 2 FSB agents tried to infiltrate part of the theatre's perimeter. One of the squad members spotted them and threw a fucking grenade. Both were injured and they scurried away. That was the last event to take place on that night, but an uneasy feeling had taken over the hostages. They could feel something was coming. Little did they know just how fucking stupid that something would be. Okay, so storming a hall seems off the table. Too many factors at play. Anyone got any ideas? Anyone? Sir, I got an idea. What? Speak up. What's your name? Ivan, sir. So come on, lad. What is it? I don't know why he sounds like a British officer. Okay, I can't do accents. Fuck you. Well, how about we pump fentanyl gas into the hall, everyone pops to sleep, we go in, kill the squad, wake up the hostages, and get to the Kremlin by lunchtime for vodka and medals. Ivan? I love it. Yep, that was the plan. To gas them all. At 5 in the morning, the aerosol gas started to be pumped in through the vents. To the shock of absolutely no one, the squad realised immediately and started firing erratically on Russian positions. The squad members who had gas masks put them on and then told everyone inside to get on the floor. A hostage managed to phone a local radio station and begged them to stop the assault. Her last words were, "They don't want our deaths, and our officials want none of us to leave alive. That's what our government has decided, that no one should leave from here alive." Around an hour and a half after the gas had started to be pumped in, the Russian forces entered the building. They immediately killed the unconscious squad members so they didn't inadvertently set off their explosive devices when seizuring from the vent. A small pocket of squad members who managed to make their way to another part of the building put up a kind of pathetic fight, but were overwhelmed and killed within the hour. All in all, only a handful of Russian forces were injured, and it seemed as if they had pulled off the impossible. With just a few dead hostages, including the ones that died throughout the whole siege, Russian tactical greatness had done it again. And early reports were glowing in pride and pomp. However, when planning this operation, no one thought to mention how fucking dangerous fentanyl is, and how the clock would be ticking the second the gas entered the building. This mistake was only compounded by the complete lack of prepared medical teams at the scene. The general consensus is you have a window of minutes to administer naloxone to counter the effects of the gas. But this operation alone had taken hours, and the medical teams had not been briefed on what kind of gas they had used. Unbelievably, the unconscious hostages were taken outside in the rain and dumped face up on the floor. Dozens choked to death on their own tongues before medical teams could even get to them. It was a complete disaster. But as always, Putin's spin machine kicked into high gear. A complete lockdown of information was put in place. Troops were stationed outside hospitals to stop victims and doctors leaving. The Kremlin stated 67 hostages died and insisted they were all killed by the terrorists. Their cause of death was simply listed as terrorism. However, the bodies of the hostages showed no sign of the kind of trauma you'd expect from gunshot wounds or explosives. Something had gone terribly wrong, but the Kremlin were not interested in having that conversation. But information started to get out. Despite Putin's insistence that no children had died, it became clear dozens had. And the leaks got even worse. It was reported that hostages that were of Chechen descent were refused medical treatment, and the hostages that did survive had their belongings stolen. These actions were later blamed on a single FSB officer. He died in a car crash that week. The weeks that followed were a confusing time of lies and cover-ups. People went unaccounted for and whistleblowers disappeared. The true number of people that died has never actually been released. Best estimates are around 130 people. The surviving hostages reported a lifetime of bad health, the majority suffering from respiratory issues. Russia insisted that they are all suffering from illnesses caused by the terrorists, mainly malnutrition due to lack of food during the siege. A laughable excuse considering the negotiators had delivered food and water, plus the entire event was only like 3 days long. Russia has never officially said what the gas was. To this day, it remains silent on the situation, but the medical consensus is fentanyl gas, something everybody in the medical community knows needs to be treated immediately. This was a complete failure, a dogshit plan with horrific results. Russia reported around 40 to 50 of the suicide squad had been killed, with no survivors. Shamil claimed responsibility around 2 weeks later. After the event, the Kremlin got to work doing what they always do, exploiting the trauma to push tighter control over the country under the name of security. The lower house of parliament passed legislation that restricted media reporting on such events, an insanely broad bill that Russia still uses to this day when domestically reporting on events in Ukraine. All in all, this was a shit show. A poorly managed operation that caused the death of over 100 people, led by a government with a history of not taking accountability for their own actions.